My name is Renee Williamson. I'm the Executive Director of Murrells Inlet 2020, and I'd like to thank each of you for coming tonight. I just want to recognize our board members. If you just hold your hand up if you're here. Whitney Hills is our chairperson. She's going to speak in just a moment. Lynn Roberts, Linda Lane, Angie Hackett, Gary O'Laughlin is out of town, Stephen Williams, Vandalyn Nichols, David Gettle, and Jeff Cuba is also out of town. And then our advisory board members are Sean Bond, who is our past chair from last year, Cindy Moran, Calvin Waters, Joe McCrory, Fred Ducker, and Scott Gibson. I just wanted to point out on the back of your agenda tonight, we have our upcoming events, which is our annual oyster roast. It's going to be held at the Wicked Tuna this year. It's on Saturday, October 24th from 11:30 to 3, and tickets are on sale. They're $35. So if you'd like to get one in advance, that would be great. And then we have kind of a new event that we're doing this year that's called an Inlet Christmas Weekend, where we're going to promote all the happenings in the inlet for the weekend of the 3rd through the 6th. We're working with Brook Green. We're working with Atalaya and their Christmas house. We will have our Christmas home tour on Saturday and our Christmas parade on Sunday. But for instance, Chick-fil-A will have breakfast with Santa on Saturday morning. We're promoting the different open houses with businesses. So if you're a business owner and would like to have something special that weekend, we'd love to have you involved. We're also working with 3 different entities on tourism packages and hotel packages to come in and stay. So if you have friends that want to come in for the weekend, be sure to check out our website for those special packages. So right now I'd like to introduce Whitney Hills, and she's going to do our next presentation.
While Renee's getting that started, I would like to acknowledge the Hot Fish Club cooked up that good chowder that we enjoyed tonight. My sweet husband, Bill Hills, scooped it for everybody. Thank you, honey. Some of y'all were here at the last meeting we had, which I think was in May at Inlet Affairs. My presentation is actually the exact same thing. I'm going to go through it quickly. Some people may have missed that meeting. Some people may have never been to a 2020 Chowder Talk meeting before. Some people came and just ate the chowder and didn't really want to listen to the meeting stuff. But I'm just going to go through this very quickly. My name is Whitney Hills, and I'm the chairman of the board of directors. I'm actually in service time number 2. So I actually was around for a whole lot of this, but in 1997, basically a group of concerned community members got together because things in Murrells Inlet weren't looking so good. Business was off, and so put together a bunch of people. They talked. They decided to get with the South Carolina Downtown Development Association to figure out what we could do to maybe revitalize the inlet and get things going. The group of people decided to name themselves Murrells Inlet 2007. We came up with the mission statement, as you see it here, and I know a lot of you have seen that. We can certainly get you a copy. I'm not going to read everything on there just so we can get to everything tonight. But basically, it was decided that the best way to determine how to get to work and come up with a plan was to do a survey of the community. So we did that. And the survey resulted in 25 kind of measurable goals. Some of the top ones being to preserve the creek and a gradual return to the fishing village image. Number 2, to improve and add coordinated community-wide signage. Number 3, to dredge the inlet. That was a big one back in 1997. Number 4, to begin fundraising to develop a Marsh Boardwalk. Number 5, develop and implement a landscaping plan. There were also some other goals that were included, and it was basically decided that a 10-year plan was good, that these measurable and doable goals, these things could be done in 10 years, thus the name Murrells Inlet 2007, because it was started in 1997. Some of the other goals were here to organize cleanups, attract motels and specialty shops, develop waterfront recreation areas, and publicize Murrells Inlet as a destination area, and also to participate in Bike the Neck, because Bike the Neck was already started. So when 2007 came around, I was actually serving on the board then, and so we had to have the conversation, okay, you know, we're here. We've done a lot of the things that we set out to do, but hadn't really gotten to everything, and Murrells Inlet doesn't really have another organized group. You know, should we stick around and see what else we can do? And it was decided, yes, that we would stick around, and we decided to change the name to Murrells Inlet 2020. 2020 representing vision and not a year in this case. So some of the things we've accomplished over the 18 years that we've been in business, so to speak, is we did get that Marsh Walk built. And we all know that I think that was a real good thing to do for our area. We also built the Veterans Pier. We built the bike paths, which include the bike bridge down at the south end. One of our more recently completed projects was the Jetty View Walk. We now have bypass mowing in a bigger way than just the mowing that they used to do. I don't know if you remember, but it used to be deeply unsightly, and now we do have a regular mowing schedule, and they do pick up trash. We also have some beautiful signage. All of the signs were replaced, y'all probably noticed, I think in 2014. They were painted, and our new logo colors were used, and I think those are gorgeous. We definitely have some established cleanups, and if y'all don't know, we now do have a schedule for monthly cleanups. We're trying to do them on different days of the week to accommodate everybody's differing schedules and all that jazz. But Renee always posts those dates on the Murrells Inlet 2020 website and on the Facebook page, and I guess it gets tweeted and Insta'd and all that stuff that I don't do. We also have a volunteer water quality monitoring program that we've been doing for quite some time. Some of our monitors are here tonight. We do have oyster shell recycling trailers. So we find ourselves here now, you know, having done a lot of the things that were on the original list for 2007. Some of the things that were requested to do, we just figured out we couldn't do. So, but we do feel like there are a lot of things that need to be done. And so we decided to kind of go back to the basics and do a community survey, which was what we announced at the Chowder Talk last May. So we did do the survey. We did the survey on SurveyMonkey. It went through June the 30th. All of the results are in. The survey was closed out. And we, the board, have been very busy trying to sort through all of that data and put it into some sort of workable strategic plan, which is what we're going to do. And just so you know, this is the printed results of the survey. I'm very happy that we had this kind of results, but this is just one of many pages of all of the comments that people made. So we did good to get a lot of people to fill out the survey. So I'm now going to transition into introducing Advisory Board Member Scott Gibson, who is going to talk more specifically about the plan and where we are now and what we're doing.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I'm Scott Gibson, and I'm going to talk to you about our strategic plan. Here's our agenda. The 4 questions that surround a strategic plan, the survey itself, our analysis to date, what's next, and then our timeline for knocking out a new strategic plan. So strategic plans, whether they're for a private school like the one we just did down the road, whether they're for the Department of Defense, whether they're for a business, it's always 4 questions. It's where are we? Where do we want to be? How do we get there? The answer to the 3rd question is your strategic plan. And then the 4th one, once you figure all that out and once you've listened to your constituents, you ask yourself, should we change our mission? Has the focus shifted? In fact, we just did one at my little private school down the road, and we did in fact change our mission. So I think that's a sign of a good strategic plan. There we go. So this survey, as Whitney mentioned, ran for 30 days, closed out at the end of June. A pretty robust response, 559 folks, which is very good. And then you can see the enormous amount of data that it gave us, about 13,416 responses to 24 questions. So a whole lot of data to sort through. And the neat thing about it, if you do it objectively, without bias, is that the patterns begin to crystallize pretty easily, and we can tell what you, the constituents, want, how you think we're doing, and those sorts of things. So it's a fun science. So this is, remember the first question, where are we? So we ask you, we took our mission statement and took its 4 components, and then asked you for each component, is this important to you, 1, and 2, how are we doing on it? So the results are pretty fascinating. We start with promoting and advancing infrastructure improvements. That's pretty important. That's the number 2 thing in terms of you, our constituents. So that's how important it is, but how are we doing? 83% rated us as excellent or very good, but you can still see a little gap there, so some room for improvement. The second one, enhancing environmental education, also very important, just 1 point below that at 91. And how are we doing? A 77. 77% rated it as excellent or very good. So you can see some room for improvement there. That's good. Initiating a redevelopment of the Murrells Inlet commercial districts, the least important aspect of our mission statement, according to you, our constituents, and a sort of corresponding grade in terms of how are we doing, a 61. 61% rated as excellent or good. Finally, what is most important to you in terms of our mission statement is the 4th one, utilizing conservation and preservation methods to secure quality wetlands. Clearly very important to our constituents, and we get an 82 there. So again, you can see room for improvement, which is good. So that's where we are. And then we ask folks, okay, what should we be doing as we look ahead into the future? And here's some, this is only about 1/10 of the data analyzed and broken down. So these results will probably not be the same when we come up with our final strategic plan, but a pretty fascinating glimpse just looking at this one slice. So you can see, what's that big green slice? 37% want improvements in communication and public relations. And we're very curious to see exactly what is it that you want. We have a newsletter, have a website, and we're gonna look through this data to find out exactly what it is that you want in addition to that kind of stuff. 2 other relevant ones for tonight, of course, look at the bike path and traffic safety. Those were big issues, and traffic safety, many of the comments there did include the bike path. So when you put those 2 together, that's over 20% of what folks are looking for as we go into the future. So we'll be very carefully sifting this out to find out exactly what you want done. And also the reason we did the pie chart is if communication and public relations, if that's not one of our top objectives, then we will have missed the boat, because look how big that slice is of the pie. So what do we want to do next? I mentioned that as a partial analysis. Obviously, we want to complete our analysis. Identify priorities, like you saw those slices of the pie. Translate those priorities into imperatives. What does that mean? We want every goal in a strategic plan is an imperative. In other words, build a pier, extend the bike path, that kind of thing. So we translate the input into imperatives. And then we incorporate those into a metrically measurable strategic plan. Metrically measurable is important because you don't want to say improve the Veterans Pier. Well, what does that mean? Maybe I think it's improved, maybe you don't. How about expand the pier 100 feet? Or how about expand the bike path a mile, whatever. So those are measurable, and you can hold us accountable and tell us, hey, you didn't meet the goal or you did. And it gives us incentive to do exactly what you wanted. Then obviously we begin to implement the plan and track the progress of implementation. When we publish the strategic plan, we will simultaneously publish an implementation plan. And the advantage of that is when you have an implementation plan, it lists 3 things: the goal, who by name is responsible, and the date. So it makes it a lot more difficult not to get the plan done, which is good news. So in that way, we'll be able to update you monthly, quarterly, whatever you like, to let you know how we're doing on our plan. And when will we do all that for you? Well, you can see on the far left, June 2015, when we finished the survey. Starting in July through the present, we've been sorting through the data, analyzing it. We want to have the first draft of the plan done in December, which gives us plenty of time, several months, to refine it, make sure it's accurate, make sure it reflects what you want, and is feasible, and is done in a manner that we can measure it. And then by May, at the latest, in fact, we could publish early, we'll actually have a polished strategic plan to present and also an implementation plan to go with it. So we are very enthused about what we see in the data, and eager to make sure that we get this right in the eyes of you, our constituents. And I think that's our final slide. I'm happy to take questions or hear your comments. Or
We definitely have our work cut out for us here, and I promise you, I'm very excited about the fact that the entire board of directors, all 9 of us, and our advisory board members are deeply, deeply into all of this. We're thank goodness to Scott, who was around to tell us what to do with all of this stuff. We really do have a course of action. But we didn't want to, just sit around in every board meeting, just talk about, okay, let's make a strategic plan. We got to do stuff too in the meantime. So let's try to look at this data globally as we put it together. And it just was glaringly obvious that no matter the question, even if it had nothing to do with it, a bunch of people, and you just looked at, as Scott said, one very small portion of the data that we collected, a bunch of people are mentioning traffic safety, specifically on Business 17 in a lot of cases, the safety of the folks using the bike paths, and the need for pedestrian crosswalks. And it just seems that in every area of questioning, that just keeps coming up, keeps coming up, keeps coming up. So we decided as a board that it might be a good idea to get in touch with the fella that I'm getting ready to introduce, because he is the man that can tell us, okay, how can we address these community concerns. Now, my disclaimer to this that I want everybody to understand, we are reacting to what the community has said, and we're trying to gather the information so that we know how to do these things for you if they're even doable. But until we find out how we can accomplish it, then obviously nothing can get done. What Mike is going to speak to is not a Murrells Inlet 2020 action item necessarily. It is simply for y'all to understand what the options are to do what you've asked us to do. So I'm going to bring up here Mr. Mike Wooten, who is on the vice chairman of the Commission for South Carolina DOT.
That's close enough.
Is that right?
That's
Okay.
close enough.
All right. Here's Mr. Mike Wooten.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to come before y'all tonight. It's been a long time since I've spoken to Chowder Talk. I think the last time was when we did the Murrells Inlet drainage project down here, and that was about 20 years ago. I think it was the first the first water quality project that Georgetown County entered into. After the rain, I noticed that it's still working, so we all did our job the right way. I was asked to come to a couple of board meetings beginning, late last month, and I learned a lot about what Murrells Inlet 2020 has been doing the last few years. I also learned a lot about the goals and a lot of the things that the citizens through here want. Now, keep in mind, I just live about a mile that way, but my office is in Myrtle Beach, and my wife tells people that she lives in Waukesha. I just sleep there. So I've been a resident of Murrells Inlet for 30 years, so I know this part of the world pretty well. And I do know that there's been a concerted effort to increase pedestrian safety along Highway 17 business through Murrells Inlet. And there has also been a push by a group, the Bike the Net group and others, to do a better job with the bike paths through Murrells Inlet proper. We've got it pretty well established going south, and other communities are working toward that end. Murrells Inlet's been stymied by the fact that the path of the bikes that they need to take is along a federal highway. and I don't know if many of you know that or not, but it's called US Highway 17 business for a reason. It's a federally funded road. So DOT, the money that they spend on it, it's about a 20-80 match. 80% federal funds, 20% state funds for all the improvements that are done on Highway 17 business and bypass. So with that said, we not only have to follow state regulations on what we can do with regard to pedestrian and bicycle safety, we've also got to follow federal guidelines. Now, if you think the state regs are tough, just wait till you get into the federal highway regs. So with that being said, at the first board meeting, the problem was presented. We've got a 5-foot wide bike path that is ineffective. Pedestrians don't even know it's there because it's not striped properly, because DOT won't allow additional striping to show the bike in the path and that sort of thing. And 5 foot wide is just not enough. It's dangerous enough to try to keep a bicycle in a 5-foot path, much less have two meeting. The goal is to have a 10-foot wide pedestrian/bicycle multi-purpose path. That's a great goal. And when the 5-foot path was put in, it was put into state and federal standards so that we could literally shift the road over. And I believe the 5-foot path's on both sides. So you actually have 10 feet. So if you move the road one way or the other, then voila, you would have your 10-foot wide multi-purpose path. Can't do that. Federal Highway Administration won't allow that unless there is a curbed separation between the two. Can't get through that. You can't get around that. It's just the way it is. You can't do that. So if you'll notice, the bike paths, the multi-purpose paths that have been constructed, none of them are right up against the road. They are all separated by either a curb or by landscaping or something that would provide a barrier between traffic and the pedestrians and the bicyclists. When you drill down into the problem, there's really only one way to solve the problem if you want a bike path adjacent to US Highway 17 bypass and Murrells Inlet. It becomes not US Highway 17 bypass and Murrells Inlet. Let me give you an example. My firm does a lot of work for the city of Myrtle Beach. All the pedestrian safety aspects on Ocean Boulevard that have been done over the last 15 years have been done only because the city of Myrtle Beach took the road back from the state and federal agency. In other words, they accepted responsibility for Ocean Boulevard. It's their road. It is a city street. When it's a city street, you can do about whatever you want to do with it. Hence the raised pedestrian crosswalks between 9th and 12th, the beautification, the burying the overhead utilities. All those things became possible because the city of Myrtle Beach said, enough of these regs, we're going to do it ourselves. Now there are great advantages to that. The advantages are it's your road. You can do what you want to with it. A lot of disadvantages too. First of all, every business and everybody that may have a residence along there, their address is probably so-and-so, Highway 17 bypass, Murrells Inlet, South Carolina. That'll have to change. You can't, it won't be that anymore. It'll be Murrells Inlet Main Street. It'll be whatever the community or the county chooses to name it. The other downside is the maintenance will stop from a federal and state perspective. And many people in here say, well, they're not maintaining it much anyway, and I've got to agree with that. Representative Goldfinch is here tonight, and I know he's been trying to help, but we need better funding at DOT, and that's another subject for another talk. And I promised the folks here tonight I wouldn't say anything bad about some of the intervening groups, so I won't get into that. But that's basically the answer to doing what needs to be done to improve pedestrian and bicycle traffic through Murrells Inlet. Now, is that something you want to do? That is a huge question. That's something that the businesses, you think about the restaurants in Murrells Inlet who depend on Google, who depend on TripFinder, who depend on all of those things to channel people to the inlet, to their prospective restaurant. I know from personal experience, when you have a major change in address like that, it's about 2 years before all of the search engines figure out that it's the same place, it's the same location, but it's a different address. So if the community decides to do this, it's got to be well thought out. And council members here tonight, county council will have to vote to petition the South Carolina Department of Transportation, who will petition Federal Highway Administration to remove the road from the state and federal system. Now, as a precursor to this, after our second meeting, I ran that flag up the flagpole. Both organizations said, yeah, we'll do that. Now, that wasn't really a surprise, but I did get a commitment out of SCDOT that they would bring the road up to current standards. In other words, they would help us through funding the repaving of the road to bring it up to today's standards, so that it would be 10 to 12 years before it would have to be resurfaced again, and they would float the money for the traffic markings that we would need. Now, that's a good deal for DOT and federal highways, because they've got a one-time investment to get rid of a long-term O&M cost that will go to infinity. I think it's a good deal for the inlet if it's what you want. And that is a hard decision, and it's up to county council, because county council will be taking on the maintenance of that road from the county line to the end of it in perpetuity. What Horry County does with their end of the road will probably have to be coordinated between the two counties, much like the widening of Highway 707. Highway 707 was a ride-to project funded by the penny sales tax. We didn't want that 5-lane section to end at the county line, so they worked out a deal with Georgetown County. Georgetown County stepped up and to pay for the segment from the county line to the intersection. So that's where we are from a DOT and federal highway perspective.